Hey, so I wanted to take some time to talk about some potential obstacles to meditation. There are 5 obstacles that I'm going to go through, and then I'll talk a little bit about them and maybe some ways that might help you all work through them. So the 5 obstacles that I'm going to be going through while meditating is 1, getting lost in your own thoughts and maybe losing focus or being consumed in your thought patterns. Number 2 is becoming tired or very sleepy during the meditation practice. Another one is finding yourself striving during the meditation practice. A fourth one is judgment, so bringing a lot of judgment to yourself, which can bring some difficulties to the practice, and also potentially boredom. It's very common that boredom can arise during the meditative practice. So if we were to go through them, the first one is being lost in thought. And if you have a meditation practice and you are finding that you are getting lost in your thoughts and you're losing focus, the first thing to recognize is that this is very common. It's the nature of the mind to wander. So if you're choosing something to pay attention to, and maybe you're listening to some of my other recordings that are guiding the meditation, and the focus of that specific meditation is, let's say, the breath, but you find that your mind is wandering to things that have happened in the past or in the future, or thoughts about the meditation practice itself, the first thing to note is that this is the nature of the mind to wander like this. And maybe the most important thing here is to practice, really. We call it a meditation practice. So it's not something that you will just, learn overnight and it will become easy right away. It can be very difficult in the beginning when trying to develop your practice. So there's also this element of discipline, and that means finding a way to sit in your practice, even though you might be getting really distracted with your thoughts. Maybe practicing a little bit of discipline and being able to hold off on impulses to follow these thoughts. Maybe the thought is, I want to get up from this meditation practice because it's not working, or some other type of thought that can be consuming. Part of the thing that has helped me in my practice is to be able to sit with that and not react on that impulse right away. And it also becomes easier with practice to not act so quickly on impulses and to get as lost in thought. There's also the option to, while you're in your meditative practice, if you find that your mind is wandering a lot and you're getting lost in your thought, it can be helpful to rest the attention on something that it's easy for you to rest the attention in that moment. So if for whatever reason on a particular day or a particular practice period you're finding it easy to rest the attention on the sounds that are happening, or let's say it's the breath that day or the sensations in the palms of your hand, it can be helpful when your mind is wandering a lot to rest the attention in this place of ease, where it's easier for you to rest your attention in that moment during that practice period until you're maybe not as activated by these wandering thoughts and they're not as consuming, because you have sort of de-escalated a little and brought yourself into a I guess the word I'm looking for is de-escalated state, and from there it might be easier to rest your attention or to practice your meditation if you have allowed yourself to rest your attention on something that is easy. And sometimes that can be the entire practice. So you can find where it is easiest for you to rest your attention that day. Maybe it's the sounds, maybe it's the breath, maybe it's bodily sensations, and just rest in that awareness where it is easiest. As you continue to practice, another potential object of the meditation can be the thoughts themselves, but you may find that when you're trying to use the thoughts as the object of your meditation, meaning trying to bring awareness to the thoughts themselves, it can be consuming and you can get hijacked by patterns of cognition. So maybe in the beginning it would be helpful to find a place where it's easier to rest your attention and practice that for a little while. The second obstacle that I'd mentioned was being tired during your practice. So if you find that you're kind of going off into like a dream state, or you are getting very tired and maybe even almost falling asleep or falling asleep, there are a couple things that I would say to this. One is maybe you just need some sleep, and maybe it's not meditation that you need in that moment, and your body is trying to communicate that you need some sleep, and maybe that would be more appropriate for you to be sleeping. But if you have a strong intention to be practicing meditation in a given moment and you find that you are falling asleep, then it could be helpful to, one, try sitting up if you're practicing lying down, and sitting up in a posture that's upright, where you have a straight back. The way that I meditate is I have two cushions underneath me, and I usually have my legs on the floor, either cross-legged in front of me or sitting on my knees, and my butt on the cushion. And I keep my back straight because I find that helps me when I'm feeling particularly tired. Also, you can try keeping your eyes open, which might be helpful, or doing something like standing. You can meditate while standing, or if you're finding that you're falling asleep a lot, you can practice while walking. You can bring awareness to the act of walking while you're walking. So these are all ways to potentially combat, or maybe combat's a strong word, to manage being tired. A third obstacle that comes up a lot in the people that take my classes is their striving. So in their practice, they're trying to get somewhere, or they're trying to do the meditative practice right, and it may be manifesting in the form of thoughts, where the thoughts are telling you, maybe I'm not doing this right, or how do I know if I'm doing the meditative practice right, or what can I be doing to get to some state where I feel more calm. If I'm not feeling calm, maybe I'm doing something wrong, and that really all falls under this umbrella of striving. And what I would say in order to manage this potential obstacle is to practice what is known in the mindfulness-based stress reduction tradition as non-striving. And simply put, this is going into the practice without trying to get anywhere. So if you're practicing and the object of your meditation in a particular practice is breathing, if you are bringing attention to the breathing and there's maybe thoughts coming up like, I'm not getting into it, or this isn't working, or how do I know if I'm doing this right? These are all forms of striving and wanting or wishing your experience would be different than it is. And it could be helpful, and you can experiment in your own practice, to just watch the breath. If the breath is the object of the meditation, bring the awareness to the breath with as much focus as you can, with as much awareness as you can. And of course, as we talked in the earlier ones, there will be times when you get lost in thought, and that's fine. But seeing if you can make the intention of your meditation practice being with the breath for the purpose of being with the breath. Not being with the breath for the purpose of, at some point you will become more relaxed and you will get to a relaxed state. It's being with the breath just out of this, maybe curiosity is the right word, of developing a closer relationship with the breath to see what's there and not manipulating it anyway. So I often use objects in nature, like a waterfall or a sunset or a starry night. It's like when we observe these things in our awareness, it's sort of this spontaneous mindfulness that arises in our daily life. And a lot of times we're not trying to manipulate or change these occurrences in life. If we see a waterfall, we're just taking in the waterfall in our experience. And we're not trying to change it because we really can't change it. We can't change a waterfall. And it's the same thing with the experience in our meditative practice. It's like bringing this awareness to our experience without trying to change it, because in a lot of ways we really can't change it. Whatever is arising is arising. And the invitation or the practice is to invite whatever is arising into our experience. So, in short, just to recap, if you find yourself trying to get somewhere in your practice, try as an experiment, not trying to get anywhere. Just sitting for the sake of sitting, and just watching the breath for the sake of watching the breath in awareness, or just listening to sounds for the sake of listening to sounds, like you might listen to a symphony or a song. It's like just receiving it. Another thing that might come up, it kind of ties into being lost in thought and striving, and that is judgment. It's very common for people that I've taught in my classes to experience a lot of judgment in their practice. So that could take the form of thinking, here we are, talking about lost in thought again, thinking that you're doing something wrong. So if you set this intention, and maybe, again, we're talking about striving, I'd like to get somewhere, I'd like to be relaxed when I'm done with this meditative practice, and you're not feeling a particular way, you're not feeling relaxed or calm, so then you might start judging yourself as if you'd done something wrong in the practice. And this ties in closely with non-striving. There's also this element and attitude in mindfulness-based stress reduction known as non-judgment. So that is seeing if you can not judge what is arising in your experience. So even the judgment itself, if you are practicing and judgment arises and the thought is, I'm not doing this right, seeing if you can not even judge that, meaning just laying the foundation for whatever is arising in your experience to be okay, and not judging anything as if it's wrong, because how could it be wrong? It's arising in your experience. It is arising organically. So more of just a watching in awareness what is arising without judging anything for arising. The final one I wanted to talk about is boredom. It might be another potential obstacle is while you're meditating you might feel bored with the practice. Like what is this doing for me? I don't notice anything happening. I'm just sitting here listening to my sounds or watching my breath, and nothing seems to be happening. And the quality that we talk about in mindfulness-based stress reduction that could be helpful here is beginner's mind. And that means approaching this practice with a fresh mind. It's like, I always think of a puppy, like a newborn puppy that is just experiencing their world for the first time. They might feel around, like let's say they never experienced the touch of grass before. They might put their paw on the grass quickly and then remove it because they're just experiencing it for the first time. They're receiving these new experiences. It's like seeing if you can approach your meditative practice in this way, as if it is a new experience that you are just kind of rediscovering or relearning each time you approach it. So it's helpful to bring this sort of attitude because it can be very easy to get bored during a sitting practice and then overlook what is happening in your practice as if, nothing is happening. I don't feel ultimately relaxed, and I don't feel calm. So then you overlook as if, the practice isn't working. But in reality, it's like there's a lot to be learned within the body, within the experience. And if we keep bringing this beginner's mind to our experience over and over and over again, and keep bringing this curiosity about our own experience, there's so much to be learned. I've spent hundreds of hours just watching my breath in awareness, and there's always something to be learned just from sitting and observing. And the same thing, I'm observing my breath over and over and over again, and there's always something that can be learned if I'm willing to bring this beginner's mind and not be fooled by the idea that it is boring and I'm not getting anything out of it. So I went through these 5 obstacles, and they're very common. And normally when I will approach these obstacles, I will bring them up in the context of a meditation. So if I'm teaching in my 8-week course at the meditation center and I'm guiding a breath practice, I might weave these potential obstacles into the guided practice. Because I think it's easier to be heard, it resonates more, at least with me, when these obstacles are addressed in the context of a meditative practice. So for now, I'm just talking about them, and there's a lot of information being thrown at you, and there might even be some striving in that. Like, you might be thinking, I need to understand all of these and apply these to my practice right away. What I would say to that is seeing if you could just take one of these 5, the one that resonates the most with you, and maybe re-listen to the podcast and see how I address that specific one. And then the next week or so in your practice, in your meditative practice, seeing if you can experiment with approaching just this one obstacle in the way that I addressed it here in this podcast. And I say that because it's like if we try to accomplish all these things and overcome all the obstacles at once, that can in itself be a striving, and that in itself can be its own obstacle. So really, all of this is as best you can, and maybe you didn't get everything, and not all of this is going to be applied to your practice right away, but whatever you did get out of it, maybe some of it resonated, and you'll apply that, and you can go from there. So I hope this helps if you are experiencing these obstacles, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. All right, take care.